Earl Denton is 38 years old, standing on South Michigan Avenue in Chicago at 5:40 in the morning, looking at a car he still owes $1,400 on. The car is a 1959 Chevrolet Bel Air. Two-door hardtop, tuxedo black over India ivory, the 348 turbo thrust 5.8 under the hood. He has $340 in cash, a letter from his brother in Bakersfield, and 278 miles of road beginning right here. The back seat holds 2 canvas bags and a cardboard box of china his wife left when she moved out in December. He didn't plan to take the dishes. Somewhere around 3 in the morning, he put them in the box and carried them down anyway. Route 66 starts at Adams Street and Michigan Avenue, and Earl pulls the Bel Air into the westbound lane at 6:03 in the morning, the city still dark around him. He has driven this intersection several hundred times heading to the steel mill. This is the first time he doesn't turn around. Joliet comes and goes in 15 minutes. A water tower, a rail yard, a diner with lights on at the wrong hour. The 348 is warm now, holding 65 miles per hour on the straight Illinois road with a kind of settled authority. Earl keeps both hands on the wheel. The flatlands open and stay open. Corn on both sides, sky that goes all the way to the horizon without interruption, the road running perfectly straight to a vanishing point that keeps retreating. The Bel Air throws no shadow this time of morning. The sun is still behind him. The speedometer sits at 67. The gas gauge holds at 3/4. The radio pulls in a Springfield country station. Something about a highway and a woman who waited too long. Close enough to true that Earl leaves it there. Springfield goes by on his right at the Capitol Dome, a Howard Johnson, the signs for Lincoln's tomb. He doesn't stop. Springfield to street. Louis is 97 miles, and he made himself a note before he left. No stops necessary. The road bends and rises slightly as the Mississippi gets close and the air changes, heavier, wider, carrying the smell of large water underneath the smell of asphalt. The Bel Air's rear fins catch the afternoon light and go red-orange in the west-facing sun. Earl crosses the Mississippi on the McKinley Bridge at 3 in the afternoon and watches the river below through the steel grate. Brown, enormous, entirely indifferent to everything crossing it. St. Louis spreads along the western bank. There is no arch yet. The riverfront is just a riverfront. Missouri is not what Illinois promised. The road here rolls and curves, the Ozark Hills arriving without announcement, the 348 pulling through every grade change with an ease that is starting to feel like a personal quality. Earl begins to understand that the car is better than he is. He stops for the night in Cuba, Missouri, a town that exists for Route 66 and knows it. The waitress at the diner fills his coffee without asking. She says the road gets better after Joplin. He thanks her and drives it over in his mind and still doesn't believe her. Oklahoma arrives the next morning before the heat does, the red clay cutting through the roadside grass at the Quapaw crossing like something bled permanently into the soil. The road narrows slightly past the state line. It feels older here, closer to the ground. Before we follow Earl any further, if this is the kind of story you've been looking for, subscribe to the channel. Every video here is built around a real car, a real road, and a life that changed somewhere on the asphalt. No filler. If that matters to you, the subscribe button is how you tell us. And leave a comment. Have you ever driven Route 66 or any road you knew was a one-way trip the moment you pulled out? Now, back to Earl and the Bel Air. Oklahoma City is bigger than he expected, the Route 66 business route threading through it in turns and redirections that drop him to city speed for the first time since Chicago. He eats a hamburger at a drive-in on Northwest 39th. The car hop hangs the tray on his window without looking at him. West of Oklahoma City, the wind arrives and doesn't leave. Steady from the southwest at 30 miles an hour, pressing the Bel Air laterally with a force that requires a constant left-hand correction on the steering. This is not weather, this is geography. Texas introduces itself at Shamrock with a water tower and the U-Drop-In Diner, whose architecture looks like someone designed it from memory after seeing a rocket ship once. Earl parks the Bel Air in its shadow and orders pie and coffee. The pie is coconut cream and comes in a wedge thick enough to stand on its own. Amarillo is where he stops for the second night. A motel on 6th Avenue, $3.40, the neon vacancy sign blinking in sequence outside the window. The Texas wind is still going out there. It has been going his entire time in this state. He leaves before dawn. 4:50 in the morning, 49 degrees, the 348 turning reluctantly before the choke opens, and it settles. The Panhandle stretches out in every direction, still dark, stars still there. He is the only car on the road. New Mexico changes before he crosses the border. The light going warmer, the soil going redder, the elevation beginning to climb in a way the car registers before he does. He crosses into the state at Glen Rio, and the road ahead starts reaching for altitude. Tucumcari lines Route 66 with more motel signs per block than any town has a right to. Blue Swallow, Pony Soldier, Palomino, Lasso, their neon burning in the afternoon heat like something that has simply decided not to quit. Earl keeps moving. He's not tired of driving yet. He pulls over on the west bank of the Rio Grande at Albuquerque to look at it. Narrow, brown, moving faster than it looks from the bridge. He knew it from maps in history class and things people say about rivers. It is smaller than all of those things. West of Albuquerque, the road climbs toward the Continental Divide, and the Bel Air climbs with it. The temperature gauge moving one tick toward center, the engine working at higher elevation with a slightly different note. Deeper and more deliberate. Earl watches the gauge the way you watch something you can't fix. At 6,500 feet, the 348 cubic inches of turbo thrust breathe thinner air, and the power curve flattens slightly. Not weak, not struggling, just different. Earl drops a gear and the engine finds its purchase again, the sound filling the mountain road the way it was always supposed to. The Continental Divide sign comes at 7,245 feet. Right shoulder, easy to miss. He stops anyway and gets out. The wind here is cold and clean and smells like pine and altitude and nothing from Chicago. He stands at the top of the continent for 2 minutes. Then he gets in and drives west. The light in the New Mexico high desert in late afternoon does something that Earl has no name for. Everything lit from the side. Every rock edge throwing its own shadow. The road going from gray to orange to a gold that seems to come from inside the asphalt. He drives slower than he needs to. Arizona comes in at Lupton, and the painted desert begins almost immediately. Bands of red and violet and pale gray layered into the mesa walls in horizontal stripes, the color of things that have been underground a long time. The Bel Air's black hood carries all of it. He drives through the Petrified Forest area at 60 miles per hour and watches through the windshield at formations 225 million years old that the road cuts around like obstacles. They are not obstacles. They were here before roads were an idea. Winslow is a supply stop. Fuel, water, a tire pressure check. A man at the station looks at the Bel Air the way men look at cars they will never own. Nothing is said. Earl screws the gas cap back on and pulls back onto 66. Flagstaff arrives at 7,000 feet, Ponderosa pines on every side. The temperature 58 degrees at 4 in the afternoon. The woman at the motor court says it sometimes freezes here in June. Earl files that away and parks the Bel Air under the trees. He eats a steak at a counter on Route 66 in Flagstaff that costs more than he should spend and eats every bite. 3 coffee refills without asking. He drives back to the motor court in the dark, and the air smells like pine resin and cold altitude. Nothing he has ever smelled before. In the morning, the Bel Air has frost on the hood. Not heavy, just enough to silver the black paint. He runs the engine for 5 minutes and watches the hood clear from the front back, the black returning in a slow wave as the engine heat finds the surface. Descending west from Flagstaff, elevation drops fast and temperature follows. 58 at 7 in the morning, 72 by 9, 88 by 11. The landscape shifts from ponderosa to juniper to scrub to something older and drier and more elemental, the road descending through it all toward the desert floor. He passes the Williams Junction, the turn north to the Grand Canyon, and doesn't take it. He decided this before Chicago. The road west is the only road he has room for today, or any day on this trip. Kingman is the last town before the Sitgreaves Pass and the Black Mountains and the worst grade on Route 66. Earl fills the tank completely, checks the radiator himself, walks around the Bel Air once looking at the tires. The car has given him no reason to worry. He worries anyway. The Sitgreaves Pass above Oatman rises to 3,550 feet in switchbacks tight enough that Earl swings the Bel Air wide on every turn, the tail fins tracing the inside edge. The 348 works at full voice, a steady, deep labor. Nothing panicked. Wild burros stand at the roadside and watch without moving. He crosses the Colorado River at Needles at 2 in the afternoon, and the sign reads, California. He doesn't stop. He doesn't pull over or get out or take a photograph. He just lets the sign happen behind him and keeps driving. The Mojave greets him with 107 degrees and a heat shimmer that makes the road surface look like water from a quarter-mile ahead, then reveals itself as asphalt, then looks like water again. The Bel Air's temperature gauge stays exactly where it should. He doesn't breathe until it does. Barstow is where he stops. Last full stop before the coast. He fills the tank, drinks 2 Coca-Colas from a machine outside a standard station, sits in the shade for 15 minutes doing nothing. He has been driving for 6 days. He has maybe 200 miles left. San Bernardino is where the desert ends and the city begins. Traffic lights, car lots, a McDonald's that a man named Croc just turned into a chain, the road going from open to managed without announcement. The Bel Air handles traffic. Earl handles it less well. Cajon Pass descends into the Los Angeles Basin in the late afternoon, the San Gabriel Mountains on his right, the city spreading below in haze and size. He has never seen this much city. He grips the wheel tighter than he needs to all the way down. The Route 66 business route through the LA Basin is Foothill Boulevard into Huntington Drive into Santa Monica Boulevard. A sequence of turns that Earl follows by signs, missing 2, finding the road again both times. The city doesn't notice. At some point on Santa Monica Boulevard, he smells the ocean before he sees it, salt and iodine and something enormous. And the Bel Air is still moving, the engine still turning, and he still owes money on both. He sees the Pacific Ocean for the first time in his life through the windshield at the end of Santa Monica Boulevard, between 2 palm trees in the late afternoon light. He doesn't brake. He just watches it appear, the way things appear when you've been driving toward them for 6 days. He parks on Ocean Avenue across from the Santa Monica Pier and cuts the ignition. The engine ticks as it cools. The speedometer reads 0. The odometer reads 2,301 miles from where he started. He gets out and walks to the seawall. Route 66 ends here, at the pier, at a sign that says so. He walked past the sign without reading it. The road is behind him. The ocean is what's left. He goes back to the Bel Air and sits in it for 40 minutes. Engine off, windows down, the Pacific in front of him. Still moving. His brother won't arrive until tomorrow afternoon. Earl doesn't drive anywhere. He's finished driving for today. He counted afterward 6 motels, 9 diners, 4 gas stations where the attendants pumped the gas themselves and cleaned the windshield without being asked. He lost a hubcap somewhere in Arizona and drove the last 400 miles without noticing it was gone. Earl Denton got the construction job in Bakersfield and stayed in California. He married again in 1964. The Bel Air was sold that same year to a high school teacher in town who drove it for 11 more years before the engine seized. When Route 66 was officially decommissioned in 1985, Earl was 64 and living in Fresno. He drove the old road one last time that summer, alone in a rented Buick, just to see what remained. Quite a bit remained, less than he expected, more than enough. If these road stories are what you want to keep watching, subscribe to the channel. More cars, more roads, more lives lived behind a steering wheel that meant something. And if you ever drove a road you didn't know was a one-way trip until you were already on it, tell us in the comments. What car, what road, where it took you. The cars remember everything, so do the people who drove them.